The silence on silos wasn't just the absence of sound. It was a kind of pressure, dense and sulfur-laced, that settled on Mateo's shoulders every single day. The air burned his lungs if he forgot to wear his mask outside, and the red mist curling across the black volcanic plains felt more like a bad dream than reality. For 6 years, he had been the only human on Theta 7, a forgotten geothermic station orbiting a dying gas giant, light years from any kind of civilization. Mateo never bothered to count days anymore. Time didn't pass on silos, it just sank. His only companion was the station's maintenance bot, Iris 6, whose vocabulary was limited to mechanical diagnostics and grumpy beeps. Food came in tasteless cubes, water was filtered through layers of rock, and messages from Earth arrived weeks late, if at all. He had once been a dreamer, an engineer for Mars Tech Institute, hungry for stars and glory. But he wasn't selected for glory. He was assigned here to monitor the tectonic shifts on a rock nobody cared about. Theta 7 didn't even show up on updated star maps anymore. Then came the day that changed everything. It began with a flicker in the sky, a pulse of light too erratic for a meteor, too wild for a satellite. Mateo looked up from his console just as the seismic alarms went off. The station shuddered, groaning as something massive tore through the upper atmosphere. He bolted to the observatory dome. Through the reinforced glass, he watched a fireball streak across the volcanic horizon, trailing black smoke and burning fragments, before crashing into the lava field 6 kilometers away. The shockwave hit seconds later, slamming into the station like a warhammer. Iris, Mateo gasped, pulling on his suit. Prep Rover 2. Something just fell out of the damn sky. Iris beeped in protest, but obeyed. Racing across the plains in the clunky rover, Mateo felt adrenaline for the first time in years. No one visited silos. Nothing happened on silos. Whatever this was, it was not normal. As he neared the crash site, the smoke turned into an acrid fog. The terrain was torn open, black stone melted to glass. And there, half buried in the obsidian ground, was the wreckage of a ship. Not a human one. Mateo froze. Its design was sleek, curved like bone, and metal fused by art. Symbols pulsed faintly along the hull, organic, glowing softly. The cockpit was shattered. Something was moving inside. Mateo hesitated only a moment before grabbing his emergency kit and climbing into the wreckage. Sparks fizzed around him. Heat radiated from the core. And then he saw her. She was slumped over the control panel, blood the color of deep emerald pooling beneath her. Not quite human, taller, skin faintly luminescent, eyes closed, face sharp and alien, but beautiful in a way that unsettled him. His instincts screamed to run, but something else stopped him. Her chest rose and fell barely. She was alive. "Hey," he whispered, voice shaking as he reached for her arm. "Hey, can you hear me?" Her eyes snapped open. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed into silence. Then she whispered something in a language he couldn't understand, and collapsed again. Mateo didn't think. He just moved. He dragged her from the wreckage, wrapped her in thermal foil, and lifted her into the rover. All the way back to the station, he kept glancing at her face, wondering what he'd just done. He didn't know who she was, what she was running from, or what was coming after her. But one thing was certain. Silos wasn't silent anymore, and Mateo's exile had just ended. The medical bay of Theta 7 wasn't made for visitors, especially not alien ones. Mateo had cleared off the dust-covered diagnostic table, laid the unconscious woman down gently, and locked the station's doors, just in case. His hands were shaking. His mind raced. He'd read about first contact protocols, but that was all theoretical. He wasn't trained for this. She groaned. Her skin shimmered faintly under the low light, like molten metal cooling after a forge. The wounds along her side were deep, charred in places. One of her arms had 3 small puncture holes, too precise to be random, too unnatural to be human. A kind of circuitry ran under her skin like silver veins. Mateo tried not to stare. He attached sensors to her wrist. The monitor blinked, then sparked. BPM, 12. Oxy level, unknown. DNA, inoenterin. Alert, Foreign entity detected. The station's security systems flared red. I know, Mateo muttered to Iris, silencing the alarms. But she's not the threat. Yet, for hours, he worked with quiet precision, cleaning her wounds, sealing the burns. Every few minutes, she'd twitch or murmur in a language his translator couldn't decipher. It sounded like static layered with music, beautiful and alien. Then she screamed, not in pain, but in rage. She bolted upright, grabbing Mateo by the throat with shocking strength. Her eyes were wide, glowing, flickering between fear and fury. Easy, Mateo gasped, hands raised. I helped you. You crashed, do you remember? She stared at him. Her grip tightened, then loosened. Her voice came out sharp and metallic. Where am I? Station Teta Shaven. Moon of Silos. You crashed less than a day ago. I found you, dragged you out of the wreck. Her gaze swept the room, calculating. You're alone. Mateo hesitated. Yes. A long silence. Then she spoke again, slower this time. I am Syria. Cipher class. Formerly of the Synod fleet. The translator flickered, struggling to keep up. Cipher class, whatever that was, sounded dangerous. What's a Synod? Mateo asked cautiously. Her jaw clenched. They are order without mercy. And they're coming. A chill ran through Mateo. Syria swayed, then collapsed back onto the table, breathing heavily. They tracked me. They don't forgive disobedience. You disobeyed? He asked. I defected, she corrected. I refused to kill an entire colony. They said compassion is treason. So I ran. Mateo felt the weight of her words. This wasn't just a refugee. This was a soldier, an assassin, maybe, who had broken away from a brutal empire. And now, her past was chasing her here. What do they want with you? He asked. To erase me. Mateo swallowed hard. He'd been trying to escape loneliness. Now he was caught in the gravity of something much, much bigger. Just then, the station's radar pinged. He turned to the console. Unidentified object approaching. Velocity, sublight. Class, military. Eta, amasortios. He stared at the screen. A sleek shape, far too angular for a rock or probe, streaked toward them from the dark side of the moon. They were coming. He looked back at Syria, her body still, but her eyes were open, watching him, reading his fear like a book. You should run, she said softly. They'll kill you just for being near me. Mateo laughed bitterly. Run where? Silos is a prison without bars. Another silence passed between them. Then Sirius said, Then we prepare. Mateo blinked. Prepare? To fight. His heart pounded. We have no weapons. Sirius' lips curled slightly. You have geothermal cores. High heat. Pressure chambers. Magnetic drills. Your tools can become your weapons. Mateo stared at her, stunned. You're serious. Her eyes were fire. They will land. They will search. They will find the station. And when they do, we either stand or we vanish. Mateo's fingers clenched into fists. For 6 years, he'd been invisible, a ghost in an empty shell of steel and rock. But now, he felt something ignite inside him, a purpose. He nodded. Then let's make them regret ever coming to Silos. A thunder in the ashes. The sulfur storms of Silos began their slow wail as dusk approached, painting the volcanic horizon with hues of crimson and acid yellow. Inside Teta 7, the air was thick, not with ash but tension. Mateo stood before the reactor interface, welding sparks flickering off his visor. Behind him, Syria moved with silent determination, her wounds barely slowing her, only sharpening her focus. She had commandeered one of the old engineering drones and stripped it down in less than an hour, converting its frame into something resembling a combat harness. Mateo watched her work. Her hands were a blur of speed and precision. She wasn't just a warrior. She was engineered for war. How did you learn all this? He asked, half shouting over the roar of the plasma torch. I was programmed with 9 war doctrines and 27 combat adaptations, she said flatly. Learning is embedded. Survival is instinct. Mateo tried to laugh, but it came out hollow. Right. I read manuals when things broke. Suddenly, the radar pinged again. He dropped the torch, rushing to the console. Syria appeared beside him in an instant. Object has entered low orbit. Movement, controlled descent. Size, cruiser class, T-class. Synod's signature confirmed. Eta, bios. Syria's voice was cold. T-class. That's not a scout. It's a purge vessel. Mateo stared. What does that mean? It means they're not here to ask questions. They'll cleanse the region, everything, including this station. He felt the floor shift beneath him. Not physically, but emotionally. His quiet, invisible life was about to be incinerated. They'll search sector by sector, Sirius said, already walking away. We need to lure them. Away from here. Mateo ran after her. Lure them? How? Sirius stopped, turned to him, eyes glowing faintly. We use the geothermal spires. The fault line. We draw them into the pressure chamber, then overload the system. The shock wave will bury them in molten rock. You mean blow up a mountain? Mateo gaped. Yes, she said without flinching. Do you have a better idea? He didn't. They raced against the ticking clock. Mateo diverted reactor heat flows to ancient maintenance tunnels that hadn't seen activity in decades. Syria manually calibrated pressure release valves to reroute energy straight into the fissure zone. The earth beneath Theta 7 rumbled in protest. Every move felt surreal. Just days ago, Mateo was repairing pipes and talking to himself. Now, he was orchestrating a volcanic ambush with an alien fugitive. Suddenly, the sky outside lit up. He ran to the viewport. A sleek black cruiser had broken through the atmosphere, its engines silent, movements surgical. It hovered above the eastern ridge, like a blade waiting to strike. Then a low thud echoed across the valley. They've deployed ground units, Sirius said. Autonomous seekers. Mateo's screen confirmed it. Small spider-like machines scurried across the rocks. Hunting. How long before they reach us? He asked. Minutes. She tossed him a modified plasma cutter. If you see one, aim for the core. Don't hesitate. He nodded, even as his hands trembled. Outside, the first seeker arrived. It skittered toward the station, legs clicking like knives on stone. Before Mateo could react, Sirius stepped out, crouched low, and sprang forward like a shadow. Her blade, fashioned from a drone's arm, sliced through the machine in a single swipe. Sparks exploded. Mateo ran to her, panting. How many more? She turned to him. Too many. The sky thundered again. This time, larger dropships emerged, carrying humanoid figures clad in obsidian armor. They've sent commanders, Sirius said. I wasn't worth that before. Maybe they know you're not alone anymore, Mateo said quietly. Their eyes met. For a brief moment, there was no synod, no impending doom, just the raw bond forged in fear and fire. Syria broke the silence. The pressure chamber is ready, but we'll need to draw them in close enough to trap them. That means we'll be exposed. Mateo didn't hesitate. Then let's bait the monsters. He opened the signal beacon and broadcasted a false distress call on old synod frequencies. Syria encoded it with her biometric signature. Within seconds, the cruiser began to shift. Dropships redirected. The ground beneath them trembled. They're coming, Syria whispered. Mateo looked out into the hellish glow of the silo's sky. Let's give them a welcome they'll never forget. Ready for Chapter 4? The explosion will just be the beginning. In the next part, betrayal, sacrifice, and an unexpected twist change everything. Let me know when to continue. The heart of the volcano. The earth beneath Theta 7 groaned with the fury of something ancient awakening. Deep within the core, where rivers of magma slithered in silence, the pressure chamber waited, armed and ready to erupt like a god's wrath. Mateo stood by the ignition controls, sweat sliding down his temples, nerves frayed to threads. Syria was already outside, cloaked in the shadows of the volcanic crags, moving with the silence of a predator. On the monitor, the Synod soldiers advanced, 6 squads flanked by seeker drones and heavy artillery walkers. Their obsidian armor shimmered under the flickering lightning, eyes glowing with artificial fire. Machines that had once fought entire planetary wars now marched toward a single geothermal station, all because of one fugitive. Inside, Mateo's hands danced across the panel. Pressure at 86%. Fissure lines holding. Detonation window, 7 minutes. Then the console crackled. A voice, calm, commanding, and cold. Unit C-17. You are harboring classified property of the Senate. Surrender the asset, or you and your facility will be eradicated. Mateo stared. The voice wasn't robotic. It was human. He opened a return channel. This facility is under civilian protocol. There's no one here but maintenance. Turn around before you fall into something you won't crawl out of. There was a long silence. Then the voice said, resistance acknowledged. Tactical purge initiated. The feed cut. Outside, the dropships opened fire. A rain of plasma fell on the ridge, rocks shattering, ash pluming into the air. The sky turned blood red. Seeker drones swarmed the terrain, scanning, crawling, sniffing for organic heat. But Syria was already moving. With every step, she was a blur, dashing between cover, slicing through machines, using her terrain like a second skin. Her makeshift blade clanged against armor, sparks lighting up her silhouette like a ghost in a storm. Mateo watched from the camera feeds, helpless and awestruck. Then something shifted. One of the dropships veered toward the station itself. A seeker had detected the energy surge beneath the ground. They knew something was wrong. They're on to us, Mateo muttered. He grabbed his toolkit, loaded with makeshift charges and disruptor spikes, and bolted outside. Wind slammed into him like a wall. The sky screamed with plasma streaks and volcanic ash. Ahead, a Synod soldier stood between him and the pressure chamber valve. Mateo ducked, rolled, and flung a spike. It struck the soldier's exosuit, short-circuiting the neural link. The soldier spasmed, then collapsed like a marionette cut loose. He reached the control node. Sparks flew. His hands moved on instinct, rerouting coolant, increasing magma surge, overriding safety protocols. Inside the mountain, the pressure climbed. 90%, 93%. Syria, he yelled into the comms. You have to get clear now. But Syria's voice was strained, cut by static. Not yet. They're not all in the kill zone. One more push. Then he saw her. Syria had climbed one of the ancient geothermal spires. From its peak, she looked down at the valley. Dozens of Synod soldiers now beneath her, all advancing toward the station. She pulled a flare from her belt and ignited it. A blazing blue light pierced the dark. Mateo understood. She was calling them to her. The Synod forces turned like insects to fire. They began swarming up the crag, climbing the spire, weapons ready. Syria didn't move. She was baiting them into the epicenter. Mateo's heart sank. Syria, get out of there. You'll die. But her voice came through, calm and steady. If I don't end this, they'll never stop hunting me. Or you. No, Mateo whispered, eyes burning. There has to be another way. There isn't, she said. But listen, Mateo. Thank you for seeing me as something more than a weapon. Static filled the line. He screamed, Syria, please. And then she whispered, just before the flare disappeared. Fire the core. Mateo slammed the final sequence. The mountain shuddered. A roar like a god scream tore through the valley. Light exploded from the ground in blinding columns of lava and fire. The pressure chamber erupted, sending a shockwave that ripped the very crust of silos apart. Synod soldiers were vaporized. Dropships torn midair. The ridge collapsed, burying the spire and everything on it. Then silence. Only the moaning wind and the hiss of cooling stone remained. Theta 7 flickered with backup power. Systems offline. Ash falling like snow. Mateo crawled out from the debris, eyes wide with tears and disbelief. The entire valley was gone, transformed into a molten crater. He stumbled forward. Syria? No answer. Then, just as his knees gave out, something moved. A charred hand emerged from the rock. Syria pulled herself free, coughing, bloodied, burned but alive. Mateo ran to her, dropped to his knees. You're insane, he said, laughing and crying at once. She looked up, weak but smiling. Take one to save one. He helped her to her feet. Together, They looked over the ruined valley. The Synod was gone. For now. But something had changed forever. They weren't just survivors. They were home. Together, a place called home. The wind howled low across the broken valley, ash drifting like gray snowflakes over the ruined spires and molten stone. Silos had been reshaped by fire, scarred forever by the battle that had unfolded in its veins. And yet, in the center of the devastation, something soft stirred. Life, fragile and stubborn, refusing to be extinguished. Mateo sat on the edge of the crater, watching the sunrise bleed across the sky, golden rays melting into the smoky clouds. Behind him, Theta 7's systems flickered weakly, running on backup power. Everything else was gone. Synod, soldiers, drones, ships, all consumed in the calculated fury of the eruption. He clutched a metal pendant in his hand, one of Syria's old insignias, once a mark of her servitude to the Synod. She had burned it last night in the fire pit they built together. "No more chains," she had whispered. The soft crunch of footsteps on gravel pulled him from his thoughts. Syria approached, her arm in a crude sling, body bruised and patched with nanofiber bandages. But her eyes held something different now. Not fear, not duty, freedom. She sat beside him without a word. For a while, they simply watched the light stretch across the plains. Then Syria spoke, voice quiet. "They're not coming back, are they?" Mateo shook his head. "Not for a while. The Synod lost too much here. They'll mark this place as unstable, hazardous, unworthy of pursuit." A smirk tugged at her lips. "Then we've won." "Not just won," he replied, nudging her shoulder gently. "We survived." She looked at him for a moment, really looked. "Do you regret it? Saving me?" Mateo chuckled softly. "You kidding? You wrecked my station, got me shot at, made me reprogram a volcano, and nearly died like 3 times. She raised an eyebrow. "And?" she asked. He smiled, heart full. "And I'd do it again. Every damn time." A long silence stretched between them. No more danger, no more sirens, just breath and heartbeat. Then Syria leaned closer. "I don't know what happens next. I was bred to follow commands. To kill. To run. You're not that anymore," Mateo said. "You get to choose now." She blinked slowly, letting the words settle. "I want to stay," she said. He took her hand. "Then stay." They walked back toward the remains of Theta 7. There was much to rebuild, shattered panels, collapsed towers, melted instruments, but it didn't feel daunting. Not anymore. Syria picked up a damaged drone, twisted its core loose, and smiled. With a little tweaking, I could convert this into a perimeter scanner. Maybe even mount a plasma repeater. "Look at you," Mateo teased. "Already nesting." She rolled her eyes, but a genuine laugh escaped her lips. Later that evening, they stood by the geothermal core vents, watching the glowing magma swirl in patterns like living art. Mateo threw a piece of scrap metal into the flow. It vanished with a hiss. "Do you think they'll ever stop looking for you?" he asked. Syria didn't answer right away. Then she said, "Maybe. Or maybe they'll send more. Smarter ones. Stronger. Then we'll be ready," he said, without hesitation. She turned to face him, her expression soft. "You're not who I expected to find in the middle of nowhere." "Neither are you," he said. "But I'm glad I did." And in that quiet, in the heart of a world no one cared about, they kissed, 2 souls battered by history and fate, holding each other like an anchor in the storm. Months later, a faint signal flickered through deep space. A rogue Synod probe, floating silently, scanned the barren volcanic moon. It detected high geothermal activity, but no life signs. No energy spikes. The crater remained cold. The probe turned, leaving silos behind. In the rebuilt heart of Theta 7, deep underground, Syria and Mateo stood side by side before a new console, their signatures masked by layers of decoys and dead signals. A new garden bloomed in the hydroponic chamber. Flowers, vegetables, life. Syria adjusted the atmospheric stabilizer. Mateo handed her a cup of synthetic coffee. They smiled. No longer fugitives. No longer ghosts. Just 2 people who finally found a place to call home.